Thank you, Jordan. Thank you, everybody. Welcome after a couple of month hiatus. Welcome back to the Inventors and Entrepreneurs Club. I am Mark Nelson. I'm with East Central Energy, and I will be your host tonight, the hostess with the mostest. And we have Jordan Zeller joining us too. He's master control. He has the ability to turn everybody on and off. If you are joining us, you're welcome to leave your cameras on, but we do ask that you mute if you haven't been muted already. Please make sure you are muted so that we don't get any interruptions with our speakers. The Inventors and Entrepreneurs Club has been around now for almost 2 years. Jordan, nod your head. Yep. Okay. And we exist to help the inventors and entrepreneurs in the central Minnesota area find the resources and everything else that they need to be successful. And this is a membership.
There goes the 15 seconds.
Okay. Yeah.
Mark, you locked up a little bit. We'll let you reboot. So what Mark was saying is the Inventors and Entrepreneurs Club is entirely volunteer. There is no dues. There is no membership. And back to you, Mark.
Okay, so I explained to Jordan before we started, I switched internet providers. I am beta testing for Starlink, and every once in a while we get a little blip. Doesn't happen too often. It doesn't happen real long, but it happens. So Jordan, thanks for that. First question, on Zoom, I don't see it. I'm looking for it. Hang on one second. Doggone it. Where's the raise your hand button?
It's under reactions on the bottom of your screen.
Okay. Okay. Thank you, Sandy. Thank you, Sandy.
Okay.
Okay, I found another place too. If you go to the participants page, which is on the bottom of the screen, there's an invite, mute me, and raise hands. So if you are a first timer here to the Inventors and Entrepreneurs Club, will you raise your hand, please? Kit Erickson, John, Wendy Franklin, I saw Bob Thompson. Okay, well, welcome. And Bob, good to have you here. Yeah, Jordan, he's been here more than once. Okay, well, welcome and glad you're here. Hope you enjoy it. I will not delay any further. As I work my other computer here, I will introduce our first speaker. And I encourage you, if you have questions as you go along, please type them into the chat feature. I will be watching the chat feature, Kim, and interrupt you if there is a question, or we can wait till the end too. But I'd like to introduce Kim Erickson. She's the president of Cambridge State Bank, and she's got a very diverse business background. She served as VP of Finance for Mini Gasco, VP and Treasurer of International Multi-Foods, and Senior VP, Treasurer and Strategic Planner at SuperValue, prior to being asked to serve as the fourth generation to lead their family-owned Cambridge State Bank. She is active in the Cambridge community and is a member of several civic and nonprofit organizations. Kim, we share a little bit of the same background. When I was in college, I worked in the grocery store.
Oh, did you really?
Yeah.
In Minnesota?
No, I worked in at Super One Foods in Superior. I was actually an evening manager there. So.
Okay.
So Kim, please take it away.
Well, you pretty much covered what I was going to talk about. So.
Any questions?
Oh yeah. Well, so I've been trying to
organize what the theme should be. And I guess since pretty much everybody knows what a commercial bank is, right? We all have them. I mean, I had a cousin once who told me that banks are kind of a little bit like churches. And, you know, you pick your bank, you pick your church, and you kind of stick with it. And one of my lessons coming to Cambridge was that was pretty much the way it was coming back to Cambridge. I grew up in Cambridge, but it was pretty much the way it is and was. I mean, people kind of stick to the banks they know and the banks they love, particularly in the community banking world, which is, I think, a positive. I mean, I would love to get all the market share there is in Isani and Kennebec and surrounding counties, but kind of not the way the world works. And so what we do is we focus on our base, which is really small businesses. And in fact, our small business customer base is about, if we take our top, say 75 businesses, that's about 60% of our loan portfolio and about 30% of our deposit portfolio. A lot of the same names on both lists. And so that is really where we focus day to day. And that's how we make money, and that's how we can continue to exist. So different than Wells Fargo, which pops up branches all over the place and drive-throughs, and they've got to have all the whiz bang stuff and 24/7 service, but you can't reach them if you try to call them. We're not that. We'll answer the phone if it's between 8 and 4:30, but then we do leave and we go home, and we don't try to be everything to everybody all night long, unless people want to call us, and then they'll find us and we do what we need to do. So anyway, that community bank is really, all community banks have to have a mission and a vision. That really is ours. And our market is Cambridge, the surrounding area. We do end up having loans and deposit relationships really all over the country. But just about everything is because my grandpa grew up in Dalbo, or my grandmother is from Isani, and that sort of thing. And so we, you know, that's the customer base that we have. So I'm fourth generation. The bank this year is 105 years old. The charter was established in Dalbo in 1914. That was at a time when, if you could scratch together some capital, a lot of people were starting banks. So my great-grandfather was an immigrant from Sweden, so kind of the Oli of Oli and Lena. And over the years, I got to understand their story really well, because when I was in college, I went and lived for a year in Sweden and ended up going and staying with a family that was still in Sweden. And didn't understand until about 10 years ago that part of the story was that Erickson, great-grandfather, he left Sweden for first Mora, a little bit southeast of Mora. And he left his girlfriend behind. She was 18 years old. And that was the family that I got to know in Sweden. I never knew the Erickson side. I knew her side. And she was a Wenberg, which is a Isani County name that you might know. The Wenberg family had the cheese factory in Dalbo once upon a time. Anyway, Eric told Alice that he would send for her. And a few years later he did. And they moved to southeast of Moore, Minnesota. And eventually, when they were about 50 years old, they had enough capital to start a bank. They went to Dalbo and they started a bank. And that was just 4 generations ago, believe it or not, 105 years. And then the story is that in the Depression, all 5 banks in Cambridge went out of business. And the bank in Dalbo had received permission from the state of Minnesota to move to Cambridge. So when FDR did his speech, his fireside chat, the bank closed, just like all banks in the United States did, and they were all closed for a week. During that week, the bank moved into the bank building that we're currently in Cambridge, Minnesota. That bank went out of business, and I don't know how they did the deal on the real estate, but we opened up from Dalbo to Cambridge the following week. One of my great uncles actually physically moved his house that week from Dalbo to Cambridge, put it on some kind of a thing, and the horses pulled it. And it's one of the houses that's up on North Main Street, kind of by Steve's Tires, between there and Cambridge Lutheran Church. anyway, so that was still my great grandfather. He had 3 sons. 2 of them stayed in banking. One of them actually worked at the I think it's First State Bank by Sandy that became Landmark Bank. He was on the board and was instrumental there for a while. And then my grandfather was Elmer, one of the brothers, and then one of the other brothers stayed on the farm. And the reason I talk about that story, plus then Elmer had 3 children, is that one of the interesting and difficult parts of being 4th generation is that every generation has to do something about buying out the one before. So it takes a while. It's not, in all of the cases, the parent that had 3 children did leave stock to the child, but in all of the cases, everybody had to deal with all the siblings and cousins and all that sort of stuff. So in my case, at this point in the generation of the bank, my sisters and my mom and I own it. So my dad left stock to me and my sisters, and my mother still owns her shares, and she is 92 and going strong and is a patient shareholder. So she is not putting any pressure on me to sell. My sisters are the same way. So now our issue is going to be, what do we do next? I'm 67, so I feel like I'm going strong, but not sure how strong I'll go forever. And I have a younger daughter who is married to a military guy, a pediatrician in the military, and he is heading back to Walter Reed to continue his military commitment and going into the specialization of being a neonatal care specialist. But he's got an 8-year commitment to the military yet to go. So my one daughter would be a candidate, but she's going to be in Bethesda, Maryland, so not sure how that goes. So anyway, we're at an interesting transition. I have no intention to do anything other than to keep going for the near term, but long term, as I think strategically, we're going to see how this goes. And the reality of banking is that this is a consolidating industry. So back when Erickson founded Cambridge, or the State Bank of Daleville, which became Cambridge State Bank, there were about 30,000 banks in the United States. And after the Depression, that number was down to about 15,000. So half of them just disappeared. And then I looked up the numbers this afternoon, in 1986, so that's my generation, that's when I started working in the world of work, there were 14,000 banks. And at the end of the September quarter, there were 4,375 banks in the United States. So it is becoming pretty unusual to be an independent bank without, $1 billion, $2 billion, or in the case of the Wells Fargos and the big guys, lots and lots of billions, if not trillions. I don't know, they'd be billions still, but big. So we're a little bit unusual. The challenge of being a small bank, several challenges, but the issue is that you have a lot of fixed costs, no matter what your size is. So for example, regulatory costs are high, and you have to follow all the same regulatory rules, whether or not you're a gazillion dollars or $80 million like we are. So for our size, we have to be really good at it. And the reality is, and what we've done to solve the problem for ourselves, is we outsource with other community banks. So my main compliance guy that keeps us on the road of making sure every loan we do follows all the rules, we share him with the bank in Atwater and Kimball, Minnesota. And he just works for the 2 of us and works out great. But you have to be creative, because at our size, we can't have a full-time compliance person. It would not be feasible economically to do that. But the people that are on staff have to understand and have to make sure that they know that that's part of their job, because we can't all just do, our little tower. Everybody's got to be good at doing the whole business. So, and I think we've got a great staff for that. Another thing that makes it difficult to be small is that, brick and mortar deposit customers want to have great service. They want, and they deserve to have great service. And that means they want to be able to have delivered to them their deposit operations in the most convenient way they can possibly get. So when, back in the 50s, 60s, 70s, having a bank lobby was sufficient. Eventually you really had to have a lobby, a drive-in. These days, you have to have internet, and you have to have mobile banking, and you have to have other kinds of payment systems that are readily available for your deposit customers. All of that adds cost to the bank, but does not add customers. There's no automatic increase in your customer base just because you've, added to basically the bells and whistles of basic deposit taking operations. So it's, and then the other thing is lending limits. So if you're the lending limit for a bank is based on the amount of capital it has. And in our case, our lending limit's about $1.4 million. If you're a larger bank, you can make larger loans. And if you make larger loans, you end up with more gross margin. So, it's net interest income in the banking world, but it's essentially gross margin in most other businesses. So there's a built-in limitation on what your growth can be based on your size. So you have to retain capital in order to continue to grow. And if you're going to retain capital, then you're faced with that issue of how do you buy out or deal with the generations as each generation comes by. So those are my problems. But the fun stuff is, as Mark mentioned, when I got out of high school, when I graduated from high school in Cambridge, I went to Gustavus Adolphus College and then went to work in Minneapolis. It never occurred to me not to work. That was not going to be an option for me. I wanted to work, and I guess my dad and my grandpa raised me to work because I was down doing bank statements in kindergarten. So, it was just natural to go work, and I went to work for what was then Northwestern National Bank, became eventually Wells Fargo. And I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and then was offered a job at Pillsbury in the Treasury Department. And that Treasury function, which is really the other side of the desk from being a banker, being the treasurer is the person that's responsible for making sure that you know where all the money is, you know where the next dollar is going to be to cover the payroll, you borrow the money if the business needs the money. So that was my almost 20-year career in Minneapolis. And then my father got Alzheimer's, and we saw it coming. And so I went back to Cambridge and happily went back, but it was kind of a big shift because in the corporate world, you really do your job. I mean, you're expected to be part of a big corporate team, of course, but if the snow falls and somebody's got to shovel the sidewalk, that was never the job I had to worry about having done. Somebody else took care of that. And, you get really good at your specialty. And I was fortunate enough to be part of executive teams, particularly in all the cases eventually, but at Super Value, I was one of the maybe 15 top people in the business. And, but you're still not, you're not really in charge. You're in charge of your slice of the pie. Going to Cambridge, it was really different because you're in charge of everything from the roof leaks to what the business strategy is going to be. And I like that a lot. And not only that, because we're a small business bank, you also get to know what all the business issues are of all your customers. So it's not just that I got to see my own organization, but I get to be really deep, in the weeds with lots of people and lots of interesting businesses. And you get to see what is going on in the community, how you can impact the community through the businesses that you work with. And it's great fun. I guess you also mentioned that I have been involved with development organizations and things in Cambridge. I've been a board member of the Cambridge Business Development Corporation. I have been called in and say yes when I asked for various planning commission, whenever the city calls and wants me to do something, I say yes, and that sort of thing. My hobby, though, has been things associated with Sweden. So when I graduated when I went to Gustavus, I wanted to learn to speak Swedish because all 4 of my grandparents spoke Swedish. And I was also the regular substitute church organist up at Cambridge Lutheran Church at that time. It was a great job. It doesn't sound like it would be a great job, but it is. I mean, they pay well, and you only go for Sunday mornings, and it leaves you plenty of time. As a student, it was a good job. I wanted to get better playing church organ, and I wanted to learn to speak Swedish. So I went to Gustavus, which is about the only college in Minnesota where that could happen. My sophomore year of college, I decided to go to Sweden. And I spent a year in a school studying those two things. It was a school where I was the only American, and of course you learn to speak Swedish when everybody around you is speaking Swedish. And that was the year I got to know a lot about my roots. When I came back, it was time to get serious about doing something other than thinking I was going to speak Swedish for a profession, or probably play church organ as a profession. So I got a business degree in the last 2 years of college, and then I went to work for Wells Fargo, as I previously mentioned. I got my MBA during the time I was working at Wells Fargo. But I've stayed really involved with the Swedish American community. So I have been the honorary consul of Sweden for Minnesota, which is technically a job that's appointed by the State Department of the equivalent of the State Department of Sweden, Minnesota. So I was on the Consular Corps, which is the organization in Minneapolis that has the honorary consuls that are serving other countries. So really interesting really interesting to have been a part of that international organization. I retired from that about 6 or 7 years ago now. I've stayed really involved with the American Swedish Institute, have been the president there. That was about 15 years ago. I've been on the board there. Not anymore, I've let that go, but I still stay pretty active. Excuse me. And then I was also a member of the Gustavus board before I went on the Swedish Institute board. So that's been kind of my, level of interest, and it's a volunteer position that has been really very fulfilling for me. So anyway, that's kind of my story. Any questions?
That's the story, and you're sticking to it.
That's my story. I got to stick to it because I couldn't make it up. I wouldn't remember tomorrow what it was. So I'll just have to go with it.
So I'd like to remind everybody to open up the chat, and feel free to chat your questions for Kim in the chat box, and we'll ask her. And I'll ask the one from John here in a minute. But Kim, so you talked about the small bank. I grew up in small banking environment, and you walked in, everybody knew your name, kind of like Cheers. And and I enjoyed that. And I think that's been lost over the years with some of the other banks. And so I'm wondering, in your experience now, and especially since you had to purchase the business from your family, entrepreneurs and inventors that come in looking for loans, what makes your little bank a little bit different, that they walk in the door, and how can you best help them?
Well, I'll differentiate first the really big banks from the community banking model. The really big banks just do it based on the numbers. How much equity do you have in your house? What's your credit score? Never mind your business plan. Community banks are able to get away from that and differentiate and listen to a story and understand the story and buy into the story. And then we have some tools. The big banks do too, but I don't know how good they are at using them. But we have tools that we can use for the really small guys where you don't know for sure if the story is going to pull together. The Small Business Administration, the SBA, is a great tool. And there are other great tools in our region, the Central Regional Development Corporation, the Initiative Foundation, that can help us do the deal when the story is, let's just say, maturing or developing, or when it's a little stretchy. There are tools out there that can help us, and if we think we don't need the help, we just do it on our own. So we are, I would say, pretty much there's usually a story in the works within the bank that we're nurturing along, and we're getting ready to make a loan or be part of a start of a business, and that's a lot of fun.
Okay. So John wants to know if you bring the Vikings the Swedish I don't know what INST is.
What is it?
Institute, did you get involved in the bringing the Viking artifacts to the museum?
That's a more recent show, right?
That was, I think it might have been last summer or maybe
Yeah, no, no.
2 summers ago.
No, I was not involved in that.
Okay.
I could tell you though, I know I'm pretty sure they wouldn't care if I said this, and I know that Bruce Karstedt, who's the executive director, we did their PPP loan, so I feel pretty good about that. And we did the second one, so I feel pretty good about that too. They are primarily in Minneapolis a Wells Fargo customer, but Wells Fargo couldn't get it done. So.
And John is, you know, as I alluded to earlier, told Kim, and I guess I told everybody, you know, I worked in Superior, so I'm a Wisconsin boy, so I know nothing about the Vikings except the Packers went further than that.
My mom is a former homecoming queen of Superior Central.
Am I back?
Yeah.
Okay,
Mark,
sorry.
did you hear what I just said, Mark? My mother is a former homecoming queen at Superior Central High School in Wisconsin.
Okay.
So, of course, my family is all Isanti County. I mean, but when she was in high school, I think it was her junior year, her father who was a farmer, times were tough, went to work for the shipyards up in Duluth and Superior.
Yep.
And they had a small apartment, and she went to work for a family and did the housekeeping in exchange for room and board. And so they lived in Superior for about 1.5 years. They turned the farm over to my grandpa's brother to farm and went off to make some additional money. So
Okay, great.
She's a
Good
Wisconsin. Yeah, and that's where she got her Social Security number. I found out recently when she sold her Cambridge house and Grant Lindbergh closed the loan, and he understood that the form of her Social Security number was Wisconsin. So
Nothing wrong with Wisconsin, trust me.
nothing wrong with Wisconsin.
All right, so we got a few more for you, Kim. Do you find regulations tougher in business or in banking?
Banking.
Okay.
I mean, it's really the thing about banking. You know, it's the same coin. The positive side is, within banking, everybody's got to do certain things exactly the same way. There's not a ton of creativity, but you got to do them, and there's a lot of the stuff that you got to do. So it doesn't. Sometimes I think it doesn't take a genius. I mean, you basically follow all the rules, and have some personality and have a good staff, and manage. You can make it, but you got to follow a ton of rules, and the regulators come by every 18 months to make sure you're doing it.
Okay,
So.
Thank you. If you have customers who need more money than you can loan, do you partner with another bank?
Oh, all the time. The community banks, particularly the banks of our size, we partner with each other frequently. So right now we're about to close on a loan where we're taking a piece of a loan on a building in St. Cloud, Minnesota. That same bank has some portions of some of our loans. So so we're capped at $1.4 million for any particular loan, but we have loans on our books that we manage that are larger than that. We just have to sell a portion.
Okay. So regulations limit what a small bank might be able to do. Is that true?
No, I wouldn't say that. Well, I mean, who's asking the question, and could you tell me what you're thinking about? Or did I
asked the question because we do deal with a couple of banks. My impression is a small bank, you have a nice personal relationship, which is really valuable. But it seems to me that regulation gets in the way of their flexibility. If you think they have a good business plan, you mentioned earlier that larger banks go by the numbers.
Yeah.
But my impression is that a small bank has to go by the numbers just as much because the regulators come in and say, you know, why are you doing business with these folks? So that's my
Yeah.
question. Is that true?
Well, they won't tell you on the front end that you can or can't. So but they don't like it if you got a lot of loans that they don't like. So they do, you know, when the examiners come around, it's not only the technical aspects of, you know, did you check all the boxes correctly when you made the loan? It's also, is the business cash flowing? Is the collateral okay? And they check it and they draw their conclusions as to whether or not it's a good loan or not. So we can't just go off the rails and make any loan that comes along. But if we tried to do that, we'd be out of business anyway, because, you know, at our size, our bank has $9 million of capital. And I told you we have $1.4 million lending limit. Well, if I've got 5 bad loans at $1.4 million, we're done.
Okay, thank you. Next question. It's 2 parts. What's the most rewarding and the most difficult part of your job?
Well, I think I kind of covered that. The most rewarding, I think, is, well, I guess I said a couple of things about that. I think the most rewarding, though, was really seeing the impact on our small business customers of what can happen. I mean, maybe some of you are aware of what's going on with the PPP program. You know, that's a case where the government launched a program last year and put the banks in the middle of it. And, you know, it was an airplane taken off without any wings and propellers, and they didn't know what they were doing. We didn't know what we were doing. We're all trying to figure it out really fast on the fly. And in that case, we were not risking our money because the government was going to make good on the loans. The SBA guaranteed those loans. But it was so rewarding how excited people were to get loans that allowed them to stay in business, to keep paying their employees. I mean, it was really fun. And it's fun this time too. I mean, it's, you know, it makes a huge difference for people. So I think that's kind of the most rewarding. Most difficult, I'd say, is, well, I probably staffing and management, except right now, I just have a great staff and it's easy. So you know, as long as they all stick around and keep doing their jobs, that part is not hard. If they don't, then I got a real challenge. So, because I've got an experienced staff. For those of you who may know, it's Bruce Montgomery and Joanne Bodine, our chief lender and chief operations. They have a lot of years and they have a lot of experience and they've been through it all, and they work well together and it works pretty well. So, but I think finding people, I think, is really tricky.
So last question, another 2-part question.
Okay.
And have you studied banking in Sweden? And how are Swedish banks different from community banks?
Good question. No, I really only studied music, but Swedish bank, what little I know, and this is more anecdotal and knowing people in Sweden, they have been paperless for a long time, and everybody runs around with their cards, and nobody, you know, they think it's pretty weird to have cash or currency in your wallet. They're also highly consolidated. I think there are only 4 banks, maybe 5 in Sweden. They thought the whole notion, my Swedish friends still, they think the notion of owning a bank, really? You can do that? Who would be able to do that? So, you know, it's just not part of how their banking system is structured. They've just got the big ones and they're closely monitored and regulated. And, you know, Sweden has, their economic system has more labor boards. It's more integrated, the labor and the capitalism, I guess. And it's kind of a different model, but same basic thing. They take deposits and make loans.
Well, thank you, Kim. We appreciate your story, and you'll stick around for the rest of the meeting in case there's other questions that pop up here.
Happy to.
Okay. And we'll switch to our next speaker. I wished I would have known that before I introduced John, I wished I would have known that one of our attendees was only going to be around for a little while. He was a former presenter, former employee of East Central Energy. Many of you remember Jaron Matheson. He joined us here for a little bit. And that I was going to introduce him because he's now in Dallas, Texas. So he got an opportunity. He's in Dallas and told me today, he sent me a text and said he was going to be joining. So I thought, geez, this is perfect. The I&E East Central Minnesota I&E Club now gets into Dallas, Texas. How big are we? Word travels, right? Yeah. But he apparently had something else come up and had to cut out here. So missed that opportunity. So Kim, again, thank you. Now my pleasure to introduce John Norris. John is the president of Atscott Manufacturing and Tower Solutions. And after several years at IBM, John joined Atscott Manufacturing, a job shop manufacturer in Pine City in 1979. And in 1999 became part of Tower Solutions, best known for their roll-up communications towers. John is active in the community, has served on numerous community and civic organizations, and he's a heck of a nice guy. I got to meet him a couple of years ago. I'm living in Pine City and had an opportunity to be at the factory and tour the factory, and I was very impressed, John. So when I saw that you were voluntold to be here tonight, I was very excited to have you here and see your presentation. So John, the floor is yours. And everybody,
Mark, you know how nice guys, where they finished.
well, I do.
But
I'm always first.
I gotta say hi to all my friends. I think half of you probably could give my presentation. Jordan and Bob. Hello, Bob and Linda. I haven't seen you for a while. Sandy, Bob, good to see you. The rest of you I don't know, but would look forward to meeting you at some point. But I think every one of you have had some kind of part of my life in the past years. So thank you for that. So I do have a PowerPoint. If you could put that up, Jordan, I'd appreciate that. Because we have a product, I have to show pictures. So I'm sorry about a PowerPoint, but what I intend to do is kind of give you a little brief synopsis on Atscott. It's pretty central to Tower Solutions success, and then cover some of the things that have happened on towers. So I want to say I'm neither an inventor nor have I launched that many successful products. So I'm very humbled to be making any presentation at all. You want to hit the next slide? So Atscott, as I think most of you know, is in Pine City. We've been there since '63. We employ currently about 65 employees. We do quite a variety of things, but what led to the tower product was basically a ability to make complete products. Most of them were for 3M, but there are others too that we make products. We've been exposed to a lot of product launches, both at 3M and other places. And so if you want to hit the next slide. So during the years, we've tried a few things. I think a job shop always wants to have their own product. It's kind of a dream of most job shops. I don't think many of them made it, and we didn't either for a lot of years. I started in '79. As Mark pointed out, we received there's a product called a shield cutter, which was used, was actually in the manuals for the highway patrol across the nation. And they were supposed to put one of these in their trunk. And the idea was you could take out a door with this thing with a hammer and this tool. So we sold these for a number of years, and it just gradually fell off. 94, we did some design and manufacturing on a ice shaver for shaving ice. And we were stiffed by the customer, both us and an engineer that was a third-party engineer. And so the two of us thought we would try to sell the ice shavers. We went through NIST approval, and we had quite a process doing that. Put a lot of money into it. Was not a success. I think we kind of missed the window for ice shaving for that. If we could have gotten it out a few years earlier, it might have been good. And we had to meet some requirements that other folks didn't need to worry about. 3M gave us a masking system, which you see there is, Bob probably knows, it's just a piece of brown paper with some 3M masking tape. In the car, people that fix cars, they'll pull this out, rip it off, then they can stick it on the side of a car as a masking system. So 3M gave us that because they were selling not too many during a year. And we discontinued that after about 5 or 6 years. And finally, for years, we made cutting systems for mat boards, for joining frames together and cutting mat board for picture frames. Company was Nielsen Bainbridge. They were out in New Jersey. With the CNCs, a lot of the big places like Michael's, they would have 4 or 5 of these in the back room. And when the CNCs came, they just centralized it in one location. So there was a market for those for smaller shops, but with the advent of the internet, a lot of those products could be had at second prices. The framing companies went up and down. So these were 4 attempts we made to get into a product line. We didn't pay a lot for the products, but we didn't get any success either. So probably the things missing were maybe some marketing expertise, some sales to get these going. And in some cases, it was just a product that wasn't going to go anywhere anyway. So next one, please. So this is the tower product. I'm looking at this. I wonder if there should be a button at the bottom that you can hit. And this is the patented technology that we purchased in 1999. So what it is, it's very unique. There isn't anything like it. There is a ribbon lift product by the same inventor that was just 3 pieces of basically like a ruler that went up. But this is the only type of tower of this sort. It'll lift a car up 80 feet. And it's quite an unusual design in that it interlocks as it goes up. You can stop it at any point. As I said, it'll lift quite a bit of weight. It was actually designed for lifting. And it is stiff. So that if somebody has something on top that they don't want to move for, say, surveillance or for a dish or something, that this will be a product that works pretty good for that application. So next one, please. Next one. So so we bought this company in '99. As I say, I had nothing to do with inventing it. What happened was Atscott had put a little addition on their building, and we hired what is now Enterprise Minnesota to come up and help us move everything out of our old factory downtown Pine City. And that person came up. He was an industrial engineer and worked with us on laying out the plant. And then about a year later, he called me up and asked me if I was interested in making a product for him. The product was the tower. This would have been 98. He had at the time, this was actually, the patent I think goes back to 95. It was developed by a fellow down in Owatonna, Minnesota. And he needed it. It was Wenger Corporation, if you're familiar with that. They're a company that makes staging equipment and things for the entertainment industry. And they had to lift something. And I think one of the things they needed to lift was a ball that had mirrors on it for Pink Floyd. And this thing would come out of the stage and it would go up and spin around. And so they had 8 owners for that company, and they got into squabbling. There was lawsuits. They couldn't find a manufacturer. It had plenty of flaws in the design and manufacturing. And so one of those persons that was one of the 8 came to me and asked if I was interested in making this product. And as you can see, it's a pretty cool product. And right away, yeah, I would be happy to do that. And then they needed some resources besides. They didn't have any money. He had a partner that had another business that he fell out of in North Dakota. So there were 2 partners, and then I became the 3rd partner. And I think Bob probably remembers, Bob Voss. But I think we put in $100,000. I think we borrowed at Atscott's credit another 100 and so grand from, I think, the ERDC, huh, Bob?
Yeah, it was revolving loan fund there, yep.
Yep, so we put 200 into it. We thought that was gonna be plenty. We put a prototype together in 2000. In 2001, we went to a show in Chicago, McCormick, that the prototype was enclosed. So if it got a little slow, we'd send that tower up, went up 30 feet, it'd go up to the roof inside McCormick Place. People would come from all over. We had Chinese people taking pictures, and we had, I think, 250 or 300 people that were interested in the product, and we thought we were going to be rich. Anyway, and I should say, just as a little side, that prototype, I drove that out to McCormick Place. I got in at about 11 o'clock at night, kind of near O'Hara there. Got up in the morning to make sure it made it through the night. And I got out and I took a look at from the back side, and the wheels were like this. So when they put that prototype together, the trailer, they didn't weld it properly, and so the axles had a little smile on them. And I was driving it with those wheels like this. So it's kind of a miracle even, but that was a little side note. A lot of issues along the way. I think I mentioned we had put 200 in for capital. Before we were done with the prototype, we had to get some help with an electrical engineer. He charged about 150 grand for the control panel. So we used virtually all of our capital up in the first couple months. Lots of designs, we made a lot of changes, and the first 5 years were about as miserable as you could expect. And if it weren't for Atscott, it's been pretty stable. But before, if we hadn't, I think if the recession happened maybe 2-3 years earlier, we might have had some serious problem with both Atscott and Tower. But we were able to make that through and recover some of the costs. After 2005, we started at least breaking even. Next one, please. So in 2001, we had the Olympics. They ordered 6 of them for the 2002 Olympics in Utah. They put them on the mountaintops. They were basically communication towers. They had a big box on the front to the left there that had seats in it, and it was basically a communications. And the tower itself is on the right-hand side, and that's kind of what the prototype looks like when it was in a box. Next, please. We sold in 2002, we sold and started selling to the emergency management system, Homeland Defense. You remember 2001 was the Twin Towers. So we sold to quite a few states, different models. This one has lights and communications. They could drive it to a place where there was a tornado, and then they'd send this thing up in the air. It would go up in about 4 minutes. And then they'd have their power, turn the gensets on, and turn their equipment on, and they'd be all set up for communications. Next, please. In 2003, the Iraq War started, and we sold quite a few systems to the Iraq War. This one went in Qatar. It had lighting on it, and they bought 6 of them on the landing strip there in Qatar. When they'd bring the equipment in, they had a staging area that we would light up. Next one. In 2008, we developed a little tower for a 20-footer. And this really came out of, we did a number of shows, and we'd bring this big tower to a show, we'd have to buy a booth that would cost us 20 grand for the booth. And so we thought if we could buy a little booth, it only cost us a couple $1,000s. So we kind of developed this as a toy. And then it ended up, people thought that they might be interested in it. You can see it's on the back of a Polaris system there. They used it in one of their shows overseas. So it's a 20-footer. Unfortunately, the 20-footer, the military standard is a 10-meter tower, which is 33 feet. So we lost out on the market because our little toy didn't quite hit the right marketplace. Next. We had to split up the PowerPoint because I couldn't email the whole thing. Probably because of the movie, I guess. In 2009, we started selling to the Air Force for the Predator drones. That's when it doesn't have the equipment on top, but the platform, and that we would sell it just like that. And wherever they take off and land an Air Force Predator drone, now they're the Reaper is, I think, the new drone. They use one of our towers so that they can keep in contact with the airplane until it gets up in the air, and then they swap it out to satellite version. But for taking off and landing, they want direct control. They got a person that actually takes off and lands it, and they use our tower for that because it's so stiff and doesn't require guy wires. They can follow that drone as it's coming in with their equipment that's on top. Next, please. In 2017, we had an RFQ with the border for surveillance. And this is, we ended up winning that. The requirement was a 80-foot or higher with a 100-square-foot wind sail, 10 by 10, which is huge, and withstand 90 miles an hour without going into the ground. And they did want something going into the ground because they'd have to do an environmental study. And they wanted something that was portable rather than permanent because they needed to get leases from the landowners, and they didn't want to mess around with permanent towers. So it's easier to get a lease with a portable tower. So we've shipped quite a few along the border. Next, please. And then also along the border, we've got now we have a 10-meter tower. That one has surveillance equipment on it. And they can drive around, send this thing up. The cab has got everything in it. They can see around, they can move the cameras and things. There's also an application that Northrop Grumman out on, I guess, Eden Prairie is using for shooting down little drones. So they want to hook this up, and they've tested it, and they're marketing it right now as a drone killer for small drones coming in. Maybe across from the border or whatever. They can measure where that drone is, see where it's going, then they fire a 30-millimeter shell at it, and then it blows up right when it gets at the drone to take the drone out. Next, please. And then just recently, we've gotten in with the FAA, and this is a 20-foot wide radar that spins at 12.5 RPMs. And this was kind of a new application, and one we didn't know we could do, but the tower is stiff enough. It will have guy wires on it, which helps maintain stability, but it actually works quite well. There. Next, please. And then we've got 110 foot. This is just sitting in our, getting ready to ship right now. So we've gone from 80 foot to 110 foot. This has wind stable on it. So and you can see the little flat panel up there. Those are solar panels. And the idea behind this is the customer can send this up to 110 feet. It can monitor internet traffic for weather, and also have an anemometer on top that can tell what the winds are. And then it can bring the tower down to whatever level that corresponds to the wind ratings at the time, so that they don't have to worry about guy wires. Next, please. And this is 120, which we'll be starting to put together in February. And this has the same ratings as the 80 foot, with withstanding. The border wants this for the northern border because there's trees there. They have to get up over the trees. So they're even talking 150 foot one, but the 120 is next. And it'll have the same wind ratings with the 90-mile-an-hour wind and the 100 square foot wind sail. Next, please. So what I wanted to point out here is it took us from 99, we didn't really sell much in 2008, the 20 foot, but it wasn't until 2017. So we were stuck in the mud the first 5 years, losing money, and kind of breaking even for the next 10. The breakthrough, it was the people involved. Over the first 10 years, I bought out basically the other two partners. And I brought in an engineer and then one other person that is now CEO. And so it's the people and then just the process of putting money together on this thing when you're not losing money. But the point is, I think we thought we were in 5 years, we were going to be millionaires, but it took quite a while for this tower product to take off. So 22, the next part of it is just cost reducing down for a standard tower. Dennis Franzen called me. Dennis wants to get internet to his location, which is remote east of Rush City, and he wants, he's looking for a tower for that. We've called around. We're dealing with Genesis at the moment to try to get him internet. But if we could get into that market, that would be a huge commodity market, and that would be probably, that would be a home run for us. So I think that might be the last slide. I can't remember. Oh, one more. Yeah, so you can read that faster than I can, but it was quite a trial getting there. But I think I'll say the last 5 years, it's been a pretty good run. We're getting better at what we're doing. So sorry it takes so long. I don't know how long that took. 7 o'clock.
Don, you're fine. We got plenty of time here. I remind everybody, if you have a question, type it in the chat box. I can see Linda's already typing. She's good for 2 or 3. But while she's still typing, I think I can talk faster than she can type. John, I noticed on some of the early models, you had an enclosed box, and the later models now are kind of exposed. Is there a specific reason for that?
Well, the reason why it's open is because it's cheaper. I think that's a very simple answer. Some people do want them enclosed. We have some container ones, ISO, that we enclose that go overseas, kind of like a ISO container. And so I think it's pretty rugged. There isn't any reason to enclose it. They've been in the deserts. They've been all over the world they've been in snow. And so the enclosure really doesn't do anything. It doesn't add any value to it. The Secret Service wanted one enclosed, and there are a few customers, but most of them don't care. So these things sit out in the open, and they run by electricity up and down. They're gear driven. And so there's no reason really to have protection except for looks.
So I get that. And I've seen the tower, John, and I mean, this is not like a wide base. It's the tower, actually, that 110 feet. That's all the same size going straight up, correct?
Well, when you say same size, I'm not sure what you mean. They unwind. Each section, if you start at the bottom, the first section might be just a 1.5 foot wide, and they get progressively bigger as it winds up, so that the top piece is on 110 foot is about 4.5 feet, something like that for each section. But they're hooked together with hooks, and the shorter the sections are down at the bottom, so they're hooked, and that's where all your stress is. So by the time it gets up near the top, they can be longer and further apart when they hook without causing any problems. It's kind of an advantage to that design that's quite simple. The fellow that designed it has dreamed it up, I guess, in bed, he claims. And so,
I guess what I was getting at was, usually you see a tower, it's always wider at the base than the top.
oh yeah, they're the same length. We do have some ideas to make them wider at the bottom. That is definitely possible. But at the moment, they're the same triangular shape from the bottom to the top.
Okay. So how many of these tower systems do you build in a year?
Well, it kind of depends on the year. So we've done as many as 3 a week for an extended period, probably, three almost to 4 months. But the government's about 90% of the business is government, which we'd like to divest ourselves of with other customers. And a lot of their budgets and things end in September. So we end up getting a lot of, we swallow footballs from maybe July or August to the end of the year, maybe into the first of the year. And it can be kind of quiet for a few months. So that's kind of the nature of that business at the moment. But, anybody can order like one tower. The one you saw, the 110 footer, is going down to Elbit, down along the border. They have an application they're going to show the border patrol about. And that's one tower, 110 foot, quite a bit of design and effort involved in getting that out the door. And then you hope that there's going to be more coming. Sometimes there is, sometimes there isn't. And the actual tower mechanism is pretty much the same from one to the next, but they put different generators on houses, reels. They can be quite complicated.
So next part, John, is have you gotten your tower systems written into government specifications?
So we're hoping that will happen in 2 venues. One is the Air Force. So what you want is an NSN number, National Stock Number. And we've got an advocate in the Air Force, and we have one in the FAA. So neither of those have happened yet. We are on GSA, so they can buy off the GSA standard towers. But at the moment, we're not. What you want to be is program of record, which kind of locks you in for an extended period of time. And we haven't quite reached that yet. Hope to get there soon. So I hope that wasn't too boring.
No, not at all. So without giving away too much information, I'd like to put one in my backyard here, John. I'd like to put an 80 footer on one of these small trailers. How much is it going to run me?
Okay, so so they can be anywhere. Let's take the 80-foot tower. They can be anywhere from 125 to 300,000, depending on what options they put on it. The small tower, the smallest one is about 20 grand. The 10-meter tower is probably in the neighborhood of 40 grand, as if that helps.
Yep, no, that gives us a really good idea. Any more questions for John?
Well, I know most of you, you're all welcome to stop by anytime you want. You might want to call to make sure I got something there, but there'll be a few there now for the next month or 2.
Well, John, we certainly appreciate it. And again, I alluded to the fact that I was excited to see that you got voluntold to be here today, and you didn't disappoint me. So,
well, I'll tell you, it's kind of lucky I'm able to be here, because this was not an easy process, and like buying out your bank partners, I've had to do some of that same stuff, and it's not an easy task. You sacrifice a lot, put it that way. Atscott sacrificed quite a bit in equipment and things too during that period, early period. So we're glad it seems like it's coming along. So who knows?
All right. Well, if you think of some questions for either John or Kim here as we kind of hit the wrap up, please put them in the chat box. Jordan, do you have everybody on the master control of mute? If you do, could you unmute them? Folks, maybe you want to try to unmute yourself. I see a few are coming off now. And we're gonna do some roundtable networking introductions here, which we usually save till the end. I'm going to do something different. And it's something that I started with my business accounts team at East Central. So when you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about you, you got about 2 minutes to do so. Either before or after, you have to answer a question. And that question is what did you want to be when you grew up? So I will start so everybody feels comfortable. I don't want to put anybody on the spot here. I will call you out, but I will start. When I was growing up, in my younger years, I always wanted to be a cowboy. And as I got older, I wanted to be a pilot of a 747. Now, keep in mind, I never was on an airplane until I was in my mid-30s. That's the first time I was on an airplane, but I wanted to be a pilot of a 747. So I'm Mark Nelson. I'm with East Central Energy. I'm the manager of government and business relations. I also take care of all of our facilities. And those of you that have attended more than once know that I have the entrepreneurial spirit. I just don't have the entrepreneurial risk. Like John said about the money and that's risk taking, and that's way too much for me. I'm too conservative. So with that, Kim and John, I guess Kim, I'll start with you since you did. We already know about you. What did you want to be when you grew up?
I really wanted to be a banker. I mean, that's really the only thing I thought about. So, kind of straightforward.
Yeah. John, what did you want to be when you grew up?
Well, I wanted to be a medical doctor, but I found in college that I got a lot better grades in business school than I did in pre-med classes. So I ended up in business.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mr. Thompson, it's good to see you. Your first time to the I&E Club. And I understand that you're doing much better now because you got rid of that Nelson kid from the staff again.
Right, things are a whole hell of a lot better.
Tell us about yourself, Bob, and what did you want to be when you grew up?
I wanted to be an inventor. I always dreamed about creating things to make the world better, and I actually have a couple patents. So I did actually achieve my goal. Neither patent really amounted to anything, but the plaques still hang on my wall. So, and now I'm too old to invent. So I'm just trying to make money. And that's harder than heck. But I'm the owner of Minpack in Pine City, and we are a paper and film converting company. That's kind of our core competency. We make a lot of tape products for 3M, and we're kind of posted experts, you might say. Do a lot of pilot manufacturing for 3M. And others, but 3M is our largest customer. We have about 54 employees right now, and 2-shift operation. This last year has been an interesting year for us with the supply chain interruptions that everyone has been dealing with. We have been pretty fortunate to be in the right place at the right time, been able to help out some clients and also help 3M a little bit. So we had a good year. We were able to keep our employees safe and operate every day, which was pretty challenging. The first few months of the pandemic, you know, we were stumbling around a lot, just like everybody, trying to figure out what to do next. And we just kept, it's just like eating an apple, just get better every day at it. And so far, we've only had a few employees that actually contracted the virus. I think we've had a total of 4, but we've had a number of close calls, and I'm sure everybody else has too. But fortunately, everything turned out okay. Recently, Teddy and myself both had COVID, and we don't think we got it at the plant, but you never know, we might have. And we both survived, so I guess that's a good thing. That's about all I got to say, Mark.
Okay, well, thank you, Bob, and we're glad to have you here today. You know, I know more about your business, even though I knew about your business several years ago. I know more about your business now because I had somebody on the inside spying, so.
Yeah, you did. Yeah, we missed her already, and she's only been gone for a few days.
So next on my list is Linda Lytela, and Linda, good to see you. Long time attendee of the I&E Club here, and also brings us lots of ideas. And I'll shut up, otherwise you won't have anything to say other than what did you want to be when you grew up? Linda, I can't hear you. Can anybody else hear? No? No? No, look, it says you're connecting to audio right now, so let's hang tight for just a second, see what happens. Try it now, Linda. Oh,
Now
there you go.
I called in on the phone.
Okay.
I'm Marla, and I own Raven Performance Group. I facilitate peer groups for business owners. Excuse me. What I wanted to be growing up was a cowgirl. Pardon me. And then I wanted to be a hairstylist, and then I wanted to be anywhere from the farm. So.
All right. Well, thank you, Linda. And the next person, I really can't wait to hear her answer to what she wanted to be growing up. Sandy, you're on my list. So can you join us and tell us the 2-minute introduction and what you wanted to be when you grew up?
Well, I'm happy to say that I'm Sandy Voigt, and I'm the director of the Women's Business Alliance. I think I've been one of the founding members or longtime members of the I&E Club, and I always feel like East Central Minnesota, Pine City. I mean, this feels like old home week to be able to have everyone here. It's great to see you. I guess I haven't really figured out what I wanted to be when I grow up, and I still haven't. But I can tell you that when I took the tests in school, I was supposed to be a funeral director. I didn't quite make that.
That's a dying business, Sandy.
Well, Sandy, I was actually waiting. I didn't even think it'd take this long for somebody to say, well, you know, I still haven't grown up. I don't know what I want to be yet. So I was waiting for that. So thank you. Mr. Voss, good to see you again, sir.
Yeah, good seeing you too, Mark and everybody. I didn't know you were going to pick on us local government types here, but
We don't discriminate. We pick on everybody.
oh, that's good. Yeah. No, I think when I was a young lad, I probably dreamed about being an architect and designing big buildings when I was a youngster. Um, Funny how life takes you different directions. Went off to the Army after high school and off to college got into city planning, and never thought when I was riding my tricycle around in Worthington, Minnesota when I was 4 years old in the 60s that I would find myself in East Central Minnesota doing this stuff. But I did kind of indirectly from the government side get to dabble in big buildings a little bit. I had the pleasure of working with John and Atscott Manufacturing back in the mid 90s when they were consolidating into the industrial park out there, and we kind of helped with the big expansion on the building out there. And it's been just a real exciting thing for me to be able to see that company flourish over the years, and to feel like maybe I had a small part in that project as
Miss you,
well.
Bob,
So
for sure.
yeah, well, I miss you guys too, John. I got to get over there more often. But yeah, no, that's one of the accomplishments I'm really proud about. So it's great to see things going. But yeah, that's kind of my story. I'm the executive director at the East Central Regional Development Commission now since 2001, and I work with a number of communities through with Jordan and Michelle, who are on the call here tonight too. So glad to have real capable staff working for us. So that's excellent. Appreciate all the work they do.
Thank you, Bob.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Next, another co-founder of this club and organizer and longtime attendee, and somebody that probably doesn't need much of an introduction. Nancy?
Hi, everybody. I was trying to think of what I wanted to do when I was little, and I think we played just about everything you could be as kids. We had quite the imaginations, but kind of like John, when I was in high school, I thought maybe I'd go into nursing. Maybe that was my mother's persuasion, but chemistry just was not my thing. So I realized nursing probably wouldn't work out for me. And so I thought, well, I think I want to go into business. So I went to beauty school and became a hairstylist and started, then I was able to pay for my way through college. And like Sandy, I took a test and it said I should become a community planner. And so now I find myself at the Chisago County HRA EDA, and we work with businesses and communities to help grow businesses. And we also provide SBDC services for small business. So that's my story.
Thank you, Nancy. Michelle, I don't recognize you, so I'm assuming this is your first time?
Yep, it is. And
okay, so now you have to sing your school fight song too.
I couldn't even tell you. Sorry. It was too long ago. I just started with the ECRDC in September, and so I'm new to the team. But I've worked in East Central Minnesota for years and years, and have had my own business. While my kids were growing up, I did graphic design and web design from home. So I really enjoy the working with the small businesses that contact us. So that's been kind of fun. And it's kind of funny. In high school, on the way to college, I decided I really liked the advertising industry, and then Mad Men came out, and that was exactly what if I had been a man, that's exactly the position I wanted. That's exactly what I saw. So I did work for an advertising agency and then a marketing firm, but never felt quite like Mad Men, but it was at least the industry. So.
All right. Well, thank you. Appreciate that. Melissa Bentendorf, can you unmute yourself and introduce yourself to us? Melissa, are you there? I'll keep watching your microphone, or if you can throw something in the chat for us, that'd be great. So the last remaining cowboy here to introduce himself, and I'm sure he's going to tell us that when he was growing up, he wanted to be Ole, or was it Sven? Jordan Zeller.
Thanks.
Used car salesman.
Jordan Zeller, yeah. Jordan Zeller here. I do economic development with the East Central Regional Development Commission. This is going to sound corny as the day is long, but what I remember when I was a kid, I was working at a radio station, and the AM station across the hall said, what do you want to be when you grow up? Well, I said, I really don't know. I said, I like lending. Family had been in the banking business, and I said, I kind of want to be a banker in the morning, but in the afternoon, I want to do something else, do some teaching, do some other stuff. And I had no clue at that time what an economic developer was. So I guess I wanted to be an economic developer, and here I am. Kind of cool. So like Kim said, we do economic development lending. We partnered with Cambridge State Bank on many projects over the years, and other banks and other businesses. You know, try to connect folks to the resources that are available to assist in the afternoon, I guess, is kind of what I do. So that's kind of my story. So.
And you're sticking to it.
You betcha. Yeah, sure, you betcha, don't you know?
Yeah, sure, you betcha, yeah. All right. Well, John, Kim, thank you for presenting today.
Thank you.
And we certainly appreciate it. Next month, Jordan, we're trying to work on some economic development folks and what they bring to the table for entrepreneurs and inventors, what they have to offer in their area. We're trying to get a cross section of our community, talk about what they have for open buildings, vacant land, what they're looking for, what types of businesses they cater to. That's what we're trying to line up for February. Correct? Did I cover it well? Wow, perfect. I got that one right. Perfect. Linda, you heard that. I'm perfect. Got to tell the EC board chair that I'm perfect. Got a reminder of that. So with that, everybody, I believe that is the end of our meeting today. Thank you all for attending. We certainly do appreciate it. Don't be a stranger. And as they say on the show, phone a friend, invite them to February, and we'll see you next month. Have a good night, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.
You don't have to go home, but you can't stay here, as they say.